Day. Woo! My name is Brittany Trevick, and I'm the marketing director for a Chicago-based startup called AMOpportunities. We're a healthcare education tech startup. Been there for almost 5 years. Really fun working for a startup. I'm currently in the IMC professional program. Clapping. And it's a great time, loving every minute of it. So now I will pass it off to these wonderful women.
Sure. Thank you. Everyone can hear me on this mic? All right, excellent. Good evening. I'm Julia Fedor. I'm the Director of Operations on the Global Advertising and Social Media team at United Airlines. I graduated from IMC in 2018. I was in the part-time program, did a mix of in-person, online, and immersion classes. I'm also a double degree wildcat. I did my undergrad at Northwestern in the social sciences, so love Northwestern, a lot of purple pride. But yeah, I'm at United Airlines. We are Chicago's hometown airline, headquartered here. I work in Willis Tower, which is our corporate headquarters. I'm also on the road a lot, traveling, as you can imagine, being in marketing and advertising for an airline. And I live here in the city in Logan Square.
Hi, everyone. We can still hear. Okay, good. My name is Cairo Lewis. I am a producer at Travelzoo. Travelzoo is an internet company that publishes local travel and entertainment deals. We're a global company. I've been there for 3 years, and I'm an IMC alum. I graduated in 2019. I think for anyone who's actually from Chicago, you'd kill me if I said I'm from Chicago, so I will admit I'm from the suburbs.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Angel, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Insights at SPM Marketing and Communications. And we are a full-service agency group. We are comprised of 4 different agencies, and we specialize in all health and healthcare. And so I have been out of the IMC program for a long time. I am an 05 grad of the, of the full-time program, and some of my colleagues from our graduating class are here, and it's so good to see so many familiar faces. But I joined SPM in 2020, right in the thick of lockdown. But I've spent over 20 years of my career in strategy, brand strategy, creative strategy on the agency side, both in general consumer work as well as healthcare. So happy to be here and so happy to see so many familiar faces. Oh, and I also live in the suburbs.
All right, so let's get started. How would you say that your Medill degree has helped you in your career?
I'm happy to kick us off. So my experience might be a little bit different than others, and I should give a little bit more background about exactly what I do at United Airlines. So being the Director of Operations in advertising and social media, I look after a lot of the quantitative side of everything we do with advertising. So measurement and analytics, we're extremely data-driven as a team, making sure we're always measuring the success of our campaigns, how many people we've reached, the effectiveness of our media channels, digging into our social media analytics, both organically, the things that we post from the brand, as well as advertising that we run. And I also manage our budget. Contracts, vendor relationships, agency partnerships. So I have to say some of the quantitative projects that I was involved with in classes that I took during the IMC program were some of the most valuable to me. I know those are some rough quarters for a lot of people. Market research and statistics. I also did some financial and managerial accounting classes at Kellogg, and I have to say a lot of those have been really invaluable to me. So I know there's obviously people who gravitate more toward the consumer insights and brand strategy side of things. For me, being in measurement and analytics, those quant-based classes were extremely helpful to my day-to-day job now.
I feel that marketing research just took it.
Yeah, actually, I echo much of what Julia was just sharing. So my background was in more traditional marketing before I started in the IMC program. I had done consulting work and then was in an agency on the account management side. I knew that I wanted to go into strategic planning, and so the data and analytics, I also took some classes in international business. Those were incredibly helpful. And really just understanding how consumer insights how different input points work. Those are things that I still use every single day of my career, and just really understanding how qualitative data, quantitative data, how all of those play together to really get us to the right marketing message. So that those were, I think, probably some of the most valuable courses that I took when I was there.
Yes, I would agree. I would say, so I'm coming from the journalism and sales world, and sales was hard, but you would learn working in sales that it's very much connected to marketing, and so that's kind of where I got my start. But I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know the language or anything like that. So I would say the program has definitely helped me stay ahead of the game and learn the language and the terminology so that when you're in your job, you know what goals are, what a strategy is, what KPIs are. You really do need to know those things. And so I think that's one way that it's helped. I'll also say for any content experts, taking a content strategy course is also valuable because there will be a lot of writing on the job no matter what you do. So I would say that's all. And also building a community. Wildcats are everywhere, proudly. And so you will encounter them everywhere you work, and we are always eager to help and want to see people succeed.
What inspired all three of you to go into the marketing field? Whoever wants to start.
Yeah, I took a little bit of a non-traditional path when I came out of undergrad at Northwestern. I thought I wanted to work in public policy and nonprofits. My very first job was at a healthcare nonprofit here in the city, a very small one. And at first I thought, I want to lobby the Illinois General Assembly. I want to be involved in crafting legislation. But during my couple of years there, I just gravitated toward all of the communications and the marketing. I was managing our email database, writing our newsletter, writing press releases. We were a small but mighty nonprofit. And I just thought, wow, I really love writing and editing, and I love producing work that you then see out in the marketplace. That's one of the things I've always loved about marketing. I was on the agency side for a long time at Leo Burnett and Edelman, and then I crossed over to the brand side at United. But just being able to see the fruits of your labor, to see tangible marketing campaigns, TV commercials, other forms of marketing out, in front of consumers, I think is extremely rewarding.
I would say, so I wanted to be a journalist, and said there's a lot of journalists in the room, I think. And journalism, Chicago's a great city to be a journalist. It is not easy to break into journalism here. I had a number of journalism internships, and I would say at times struggled to make the right connections. It's not just about doing good work, it's about also making those connections. That's the way of the world. So I had an editorial internship at a travel company that turned into a sales position, which I really didn't know anything about, but was a good pivot in my career because that's when I started to learn about marketing. So don't be afraid to try something new if you cannot find a way into something else that you were considering.
I also, out of undergrad, I did consulting in the healthcare space, and I had many friends that worked in advertising, and all I wanted to do was work at an advertising agency. And so, honestly, that's really what got me, I guess, my foot in the door in marketing. It wasn't something that I came out of undergrad knowing that I wanted to do. However, I think one of the things that I learned throughout my entire career journey is just the value of starting at the bottom of any career that you have and just really being able to absorb and understand all of the important steps and what everyone else does within the organization. And so while I had started as an account coordinator at an agency here in Chicago, and I realized that I loved marketing. I loved the consumer work, the creative work, but wasn't sure that client service was for me. And so that's when I started exploring what are some other marketing avenues that were still in the creative services spaces. And so I went back to school after a few years on the agency side, and then went back to an agency, and I'm still there. So.
Great. What would you say is the best piece of advice you have received from a woman in the marketing profession?
I'll start. I have had almost all of the bosses that I've had throughout my entire career have been women, and which I now looking back is such a gift, but I didn't realize it at the time. I just thought that's how it was. But I think probably the most valuable piece of advice, it was actually the year after I graduated from the IMC program. And I was really at a kind of a transitional point in my career, moving from sort of middle management to starting to manage a team and larger pieces of business. And she was actually not my boss. She was one of my coworkers, but had more years of experience in the agency and just said, you have to be an advocate for yourself. And, you have to be highly aware of everyone around you. And if you see something that you want, you have to fight for it because others aren't going to fight for you. And that was probably one of the most critical pieces of advice that I ever received, because it's sort of been in the back of my head ever since. And that doesn't mean you have to bully your way anywhere, but it's just really learning to be an advocate and not being afraid to do that.
I would say for me, the best advice I'd received was from a manager early on, and she said that you learn by doing. And so it really is a practice makes perfect situation, especially when you're new to marketing. Part of what we do at Travelzoo is negotiate and be creative and post travel deals, and there's an example, there's a cost per click product that we manage. You don't really need to know what that is, but I was terrified to manage it. So, I got a set of clients that actually work with that product, and that's how you learn to become more comfortable with the marketing language, how you work on things and get that tangible skill. And most importantly, when you've learned something, teach it to someone else. That is definitely the pathway for knowledge and how we open up the doors for other women who may want to learn the same thing but maybe don't want to ask.
I was going to say, actually, similar to Kim, it dawned on me that I've had managers entirely who were women over the course of my career, agency side, brand side. And similarly to the, being your own best advocate, I call it internal PR. That's some of the best advice I've been given, especially by a former boss of mine, of, yes, it's great to produce good work, but people might not always see that work. So craft that email to send to your leader or your executive, alert your team to something that you've just launched or a strategy that you're working on. Those things can go a really long way. And it might feel a little strange at first, that type of self-promotion, but that internal PR is so critical. And then once you do reach a point of managing other people, being their advocates as well and promoting their work to your boss or your boss's boss. So internal PR is the way that I sum it up.
I love that. I love all of that advice. So kind of on the flip side, and maybe the answers are going to be similar, but what advice would you give to women in marketing, particularly those who are just starting out in their career?
Well, I would definitely encourage them to be their advocate, but I also think don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think that that's one of the things that I do feel fortunate for the environments that I've been in, whether it be, at different agencies, that you have to make mistakes to learn and to really be able to stretch yourself. And I think that that's one of the things that I would encourage, and I always encourage my teams, just try it. If you don't try it, you're never gonna know. And especially now when so many of us are working virtually and it's hard to it's sometimes hard, I think, and isolating for a lot of people when they're working and they aren't really sure, should I do this or not? And I just try to really encourage people to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, not be afraid to ask for help too, and don't be shy. I mean, people are really happy that you're there, and people are really happy to answer questions. And I think sometimes just starting out in your career, you feel like maybe you're a bother if you're asking questions, or other people are too busy. And I would say we never are too busy to help, foster men or women that are looking to grow in their careers.
That's great. I would say if you're struggling to make connections, this is actually more good advice I received from women. Be the connector. It really does go a long way when you're trying to make connections to also connect your friends or mentors to other people in the business. That certainly goes a long way as well. And don't be afraid to ask for help. That's a lot of what you had said, but it really is the pathway to learning for sure.
And I have two bits of advice. So one is you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know that you want to be in client services or you want to be a brand strategist. Give yourself the grace of trying out different roles, different companies. It took me a while to figure out what industry did I want to settle in and what type of role. You know, I've done project management, digital production, client service, and that's okay to pivot, take lateral moves. Try out the agency side, try out the brand side. I know that's a really big question for a lot of marketers of which side do I go to, and I think you'll naturally find that you like one or the other, or try them both and then make a longer term decision. My second piece of advice, this is a phrase that I like to use a lot and I tell to a lot of my team members, is get known, get liked, get trusted. So especially if you're new on a team or at a company, put your name out there. Like, get involved in employee resource groups, raise your hand for projects, like have your name literally be visible in people's inboxes so they start to know your name, who you are, what role you serve, and then deliver great work. Obviously, meet your deadlines, deliver a great product, facilitate meetings, you know, whatever the case is in your particular position. And over time, as a result of getting known by name, getting liked because you do good work, you will build trust. And once you've built that trust, people will want you on their project teams, especially in the agency world. When you have a new piece of business, a new client account, or a new line of work with an existing client, and all of a sudden the leaders have to come together and determine, well, who's going to staff this piece of work, this piece of business. And it's great to have your name at the top of the list where people say, I want that person on my team because they do really phenomenal work.
And I think that kind of goes along with asking for help, right? If you're asking for help, you're obviously showing yourself out to others and showing that you really care. And I think it can be hard to ask for help, but people aren't going to think you're dumb or think you're asking a stupid question. We all have probably those questions. So what challenges did you face early on in your career or even now, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Like there were a lot. I'm trying to think, I'm trying to distill some down. I mean, I guess, you know, starting out, and I'll take it from the point of after graduating from the IMC program, I think you come out pretty confident that you're capable, but I think a lot of times the real world is a little bit different than the practice of it prior to, you know, while you're in the program. And I guess being okay making mistakes and not being afraid to put yourself out there, I think is probably one of the toughest things, because you don't have the confidence, you don't have the comfort zone of knowing everybody that you're working with. But I found, like, if you can be just really useful to people, that goes way farther than being an expert in anything, especially, I mean, I think that's true no matter in any circumstance, but I think particularly in the beginning. And then you really are able to find out what you're good at, what you like, and then all of a sudden things start becoming more intuitive and natural, and you're not as afraid to try. I mean, I used to be terrified of having to get up to a new business pitch. That was probably the worst. I think, like, that once you're kind of at that stage of presenting a lot, but you're very early in your career, I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges. But if you're on the agency side, you get over that real quickly because you're doing it a lot. But that was tough.
For me, I would say goal setting. You know, it really does, putting pen to paper and writing your goals down can be daunting, because if you don't meet them, then you have to, you know, reckon with yourself at the end of the day. But I say that because that really also helps you set boundaries. You know, when you're new to the working space, you want to say yes to everything, you want to fill your cup, but you'll also get really, really busy. And so one way to think about that is, you know, what I'm doing today achieving my professional goals or our business goals? Because especially if you're great at your job, you'll be asked to do many things. So having to say no so that you can say yes to more important things is definitely key. I would also say something else I struggled with, just to be honest, for this, is also finding a sense of belonging. You know, there would be times when I'm the only woman in the room, or I'm the only black woman in the room, and you have to learn to navigate those situations. You know, it definitely goes from not being noticed to not only being noticed, but being judged even more harshly than your colleagues. But it really does help to talk about it and to make sure that you have a team that can level set with you and say, she's the expert, listen to her, or you're in good hands with her, she won't steer you wrong. And so I'm really fortunate to have that. And I think it's important to voice that too, because it is about creating an environment that's better for the people that come after you too.
Yeah, one of my biggest challenges was also just the imposter syndrome. I mean, Hope mentioned it a moment ago with the session that she's facilitating around self-confidence, but that is real. That is hard. I think it's hard for a lot of people in general, but women in particular, there's this fine balance of, okay, I want to exude confidence, maybe fake it till I make it a little bit, but also recognizing, especially once you've had a certain amount of experience under your belt or you've gone through the IMC program, you are a skilled marketer. You are good at what you do. And it took me a while to, sort of internalize that and then make sure that I was showing up in presentations and with my team in that way. So the imposter syndrome is a challenge. It can be overcome for sure. And then I think the second challenge is managing people. When you reach a certain point in your career that you have a team, I have a team of 26 nowadays. When you have high-functioning, high-performing team members, it's a dream. You couldn't ask for better teammates. When people have performance or behavioral issues, those are tough conversations, and not everyone's a good people manager. Some people are really good individual contributors. Some people are good people managers. Some people are good at both. I hope I'm good at both. I don't know. but yeah, managing people. And I mean, that's not limited to marketing by any means. That's anywhere that you work, any industry that you're in. That's a challenge. Nobody gives you a field guide on how to manage people and people operations. You hope you're given some skills and mentorship, or maybe you get some learning and development through your company, but you kind of learn along the way as well.
26 people, that is so many. How would you say that the IMC way has evolved since you graduated?
Can I just say, there's a culture and inclusion class here. We didn't have that in my time. And I think Dean Whitaker is laughing because I was a part of the student leadership committee and we wanted that so badly. I mean, I think you all have the pleasure of having this global community and getting to know each other. Really take advantage of it. And I think in the past 2 to 3 years, with everything that's gone on, we have seen how brands have addressed or not addressed what's going on, and consumers really are looking for brands that authentically stand behind something. So, and you can find that where you work too. At Travelzoo, I'm really happy to be a part of a diversity group that launches panels where we invite industry experts to talk about how we make travel more inclusive. So I'm so glad that class exists, and it is very different from IMC as I knew it 3 years ago, and it's better.
I was going to say, I graduated in 2018 from the IMC program, and I feel like so much has changed about marketing and communications in those 5 years. It's become increasingly complex, even more so integrated. So many companies still have these divisions of there's the marketing team and there's the corporate communications team, and they don't always talk to each other. But I think to be an effective marketer, now more than ever, you all have to be in lockstep. The marketer, the advertiser, the person who works in PR and media relations, because you need to think full funnel, customer centricity, of course, always at its core with IMC, but how do you launch an initiative where you're putting it out in your own communication channels and you're getting media coverage and you're putting dollars behind paid media channels. So it's complex out there, and more so than ever.
I don't know if this answers your question exactly, but I will say, I graduated forever ago. So, thinking about how the program and the whole world of marketing has evolved, I would say one of the things that just the program in general, so my colleagues are here and we work in healthcare with hospitals and health systems, and oftentimes we talk about the benefit of academic medicine just giving you options. And I would say that for having graduated from the IMC program, I don't know that it prepared me for everything, but it certainly educated me on what are the different problem-solving options that I have, and I know enough to be able to explore and then deploy them as new things come up, as things change. So while I feel like the world has changed tremendously in terms of the consumer behavior and the expectation of marketing and connecting brands to consumers, and just even the marketing channels are so different today than they were in 2005. I mean, I don't even know, we didn't really even have phones that much and stuff, you know, but like, I think, but what hasn't changed are the fundamentals of how do we communicate with people and how do we find information, and the quantitative and the qualitative, and being prepared to navigate different ways to get the right answers. So, you know, I think that's that's a common thread for me that the program has given to me, but then has helped me navigate as the world changes a lot really fast.
Everything you said is why I joined this program, so you love to hear it. Last question for me. What is some innovative channels of marketing or practices that you are using in your career at your companies?
I guess I could take the plunge. Well, we haven't, I paused because we haven't gotten there yet, but Travelzoo is entering the metaverse. So that's not a project I work on. In fact, I don't know anything about it yet. But what is public information is that we are entering the metaverse to help make virtual reality experiences in travel possible. So that's the project. But what I would work on specifically is, you know, in taking us back 2-3 years ago in the midst of the pandemic, when people couldn't travel internationally, we had to renegotiate our deals and make sure that we were advertising domestic content so that people were traveling safely and closer to home. And a lot of my projects would involve aligning our terms and conditions with that of the CDC, just to make sure that travelers had the information they need to get, you know, where they needed to get and back safely. So we have since reversed that. We're in the deal space and experiencing this surge of travelers and who want to travel somewhere internationally. So I'm happy to be on that end. But it really is about knowing consumers' needs. You know, it really is out of touch to have been advertising something international with, you know, immediate travel dates when we couldn't go anywhere. So it's not per se, you know, about modern innovation. Sometimes it's about going back to basics.
I think one of the things that is exciting that came out of, I think, the last couple of years is the availability and the quality of data and being able to access it. And I think for someone in the strategy and insights team at an agency, we used to getting data and running, you know, whether it be qualitative or quantitative, was always extremely slow. And I think that with the modernization and availability of access to data, there are a lot of barriers that have come down. It's not as expensive as it used to be. There's just a lot of better ways to get in touch and talk to and connect with consumers. And that's just opened up the doors to so many different types of conversations with consumers. And learning about brands. I mean, we do online ethnographic work where you're like a fly on the wall and hearing how consumers are talking about your brands, how professionals are talking about your brands, so you can use it in the recruiting space or in the employee brand space. And, you know, that technology didn't exist a few years ago. And then just even focus groups where we used to all have to make sure everyone was able to come down to Schlesinger, you know, over here and sit in a room from 6 to 8. And now we do it virtually. And not only is it easier for the consumers and the respondents, but you get to see like where they live and you get to see who they interact with. And there's just such a depth to the insights that you get that never was accessible before. So availability and quality of data, I think, is something that allows us to be a lot more innovative in our jobs today.
I have a product innovation to share, which is also kind of its own marketing challenge. At United Airlines, we have this really fascinating tool called Connection Saver. It was built by our digital technology team. It uses all these algorithms where basically we try to prevent missed connections. So if someone is flying with us domestically or internationally, they might have a layover in a city. Well, if you're first flight is delayed, of course, there's the potential you might miss your second flight, depending on where your where your final destination is. There may be another flight that day, or there may not. You know, if you're flying internationally, some of the places we go, we only have one daily flight out of New York or Chicago or San Francisco. So our digital team created this tool called Connection Saver that basically runs all this data and looks to see how many potential missed connections are there. And it equips our gate agents and customer service representatives with basically a recommendation to say, you should hold this flight and wait to depart. It might mean that that second flight is, you know, 15 minutes or 20 minutes late, pushing back from the gate and taking off, but we're actually going to save all of those connections and make sure that a dozen or 24 customers make it onto that flight, as opposed to kind of screwing them over and them getting stuck in their layover city. So it's a really fascinating tool. We love it. Like literally thousands of these connections are saved every month because of this tool, where our gate agents can then make that call on the spot and say, I see I have 100 customers coming in from other flights, and if I get this flight off the ground, that means they're all going to miss it. But if I just wait 10 more extra minutes, all of these people are going to be able to get on board before we have to close the gate and close the door. Connection Saver, though, this is a really big challenge for us as marketers and advertisers. It just took me 2 minutes to explain what that tool is. So we try to sum this up in a headline on a billboard or in a digital ad. We created a 15-second video to try to explain what Connection Saver is. So it's been one of our biggest challenges as marketers, trying to demonstrate this really great consumer benefit for our customers and this competitive edge that we have over our airline competitors who do not have this type of tool that they've built in-house. But then how do we sum all that up quickly and let people know? Because it does happen behind the scenes, and if you make your next flight, oh, you're relieved in the moment, you're great. Well, you don't know that Connection Saver kind of had your back and was doing the work behind the scenes. So that's an innovation that we have, but just an ongoing challenge we're trying to solve for with our messaging and how we get the word out to our customers.
That is so cool. There's nothing worse than being stuck in an airport. So I love to hear that. So that was my last question. Now I want to open it to Q&A.
I'll do the mic running.
Perfect.
Before I do, did you want to do your quiz?
We have a quiz.
I brought a couple of giveaways, some little swag bags. I'll show you what the products are in a moment. All right, who is the first person who can answer for me what the 5 Ps of marketing are? Raise your hand. Right here, in the middle.
Okay, so it's price, promotion, placement, people, and...
Got a little help, but it counts. This is for you. Yeah, so we have products. Oh, sure.
All right, we have one more quiz
So
question.
I'll explain quickly what's in the bag. So we have over 800 aircraft, individual planes that are in our fleet that we fly all around the world. There's a box in there that is an aircraft model. It is our Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner. It's one of our most modern planes. It is absolutely beautiful. If you ever get to fly on it, I could rave all about the Boeing Dreamliner. It's not the 2-story one. We used to have those. We retired them.
All right, you have one more quiz?
All right, I have a second.
One more trivia question.
Second and final. And maybe we'll go with whoever gets the closest guess possible. Does anyone know when United Airlines was founded? Again, we're Chicago's hometown airline. We do a lot of advertising here. Any guesses? Raise your hands. Ooh, pretty close. I'll take 2 more guesses. A little bit farther off. I think Pink, maybe you had your hand up next. Yes!
We have a winner. Okay, and we have some time for questions. So if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll pass you the mic, and you can direct your question to everybody or to an individual. Alexa, I see your hand up. I'm going to go. Wait, hold on. You have to take the mic first because we're recording this.
Ooh, let me be heard. Hi, so I'm Alexa. In full disclosure, I am not an IMC, student. So when you said metaverse, I was like, ooh, no spoilers. I haven't seen the new Ant-Man movie, but with Marvel. No, never mind. But anyways, one thing that I'm really interested in that you brought up, Julia, and I'm sure all of you have experienced, is being in environments of collaboration and managing people, even when you're not necessarily like the person in charge of managing people. I think that's something that we're always going to be doing in our career as journalists. And I guess my question is, what is something I've already experienced is just how to be an effective leader or co-collaborator when it comes to bringing out the best in people, especially like when you're working with high-functioning people who all have wonderful ideas. How do you bring out the best in people without letting maybe like negativity or ego get in the way to make sure that we're putting out also like a great product as well?
I always like to understand, first and foremost, what are people's communication styles in terms of being managed or communicating with their team members? Do they prefer written communication? Are they more of a verbal person and need to talk things out? Do they like to prepare a slide deck in order to get their thoughts together and then have a conversation? So everybody that I work with and that I directly manage, I always try to suss out what are their communication preferences and styles and adapt to them rather than them having to adapt to me. And so I think through that kind of understanding personalities and behaviors, it can help bring out the best in people. Or if I have a team member who is extremely shy and reserved, he sits in another office, he's not based where the rest of our team is, and he is way better at, putting together a report in a PowerPoint deck, summing up the key takeaways in an email, sending that off to members of our leadership team, rather than me forcing him to present on a call. And we just, we've established a good rhythm together. So I think obviously you want to stretch people as well and get them additional skills, but only sort of push them out of their comfort zone to an extent.
Yeah, I guess I have two thoughts on this. One, I think when you're managing people, you have to really become a good listener and a really good observer, and be okay with taking some time to try to figure the dynamic of the team out, the individual styles, because oftentimes people aren't able to articulate, what's going to work for them when, especially as a team is coming together that might be relatively new, or you have new team members. Also, and I'm going to say this, and I don't want it to come across in a negative way, I think you have to be okay with not being best friends with everyone on your team and knowing that, everyone's there to do obviously collaborate and work together, but also there to do a distinct job. And you have to focus on helping them succeed in that role and the quality of output that they are going to deliver. Not if you like them personally, not if you guys are just really different or really the same. I think that is one of the things that throughout my career I've had to kind of grow into, because you'll find your people at work. That you're friends with and that help keep you going and help you grow in a lot of different ways. But as a manager, you have to be okay with and respectful of everyone has their own style, and you're there to really help them be the best version of themselves.
I will say, so I don't specifically manage people, but what I have observed that's done well, and we do this at Travelzoo, when we have meetings, oftentimes we will put times next to each part of the meeting to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak. And that goes a really long way, because you may have junior employees or people that just started that don't know how to get a word in and don't want to interrupt anyone. So that small tidbit goes a long way. I will also say just putting junior employees in leadership positions to begin with. Everyone needs to start somewhere, and being thrust into a leadership position may be a good way to get your voice heard. So that I don't specifically manage people, but I manage content strategy for a vacation team, for example, and I like talking about strategy. I'd like to be a people manager, but this is a good first step towards doing that. So those are a couple things that we do that I think are good for young employees.
Can I add one other thing to this? And this is something that I learned, a coworker of mine a long time ago, he was an account director, and he was masterful at coaching his team. And what he was so good at was coaching them before the situation started. So like going into a meeting, just being really intentional about, here's what's going to be covered, and here's your role. These are the types of questions that you can ask in there. Even though you're the most junior person by 20 years, you still have an important role. And if he would make sure that everyone around the table had a role in the meeting, otherwise you didn't have to be there. And I think that it was just such a great coaching opportunity, but doing it in a way that, helped these younger colleagues feel comfortable walking into a room and not like, oh my gosh, what am I going to ask? Like, they were very well prepared, and I think it gives you a lot of confidence.
So you kind of brought up the accessibility of data that's come up recently. So my question was that brings up obvious ethical concerns. I know that's been talked about recently, and just how you guys have found that that's balanced in the marketing world with this upcoming accessibility to data.
Yeah, I can start. The world that I live in at the agency, we do qualitative and quantitative research, and that's how we access, let's say, databases. But those are always, we usually access everything through a panel provider, a panel aggregator. And so my team doesn't necessarily utilize the free data that's out there. We do have a data and analytics team that uses a lot of that, and our media teams have access and understanding of that. But that's sort of out of my area of expertise or understanding. And so when I talk about availability and quality of data, it's just we're able to access it through these different channels now, and through these different providers at a much more cost and time efficient way, just because of the availability of data.
Yeah, I would say at Travelzoo, so we rely on our own search data, but also data from organizations like MMGY, and that's widely known, right? So I think it's important to take in that general information, but also distill what it means for your type of consumer. So not every trend or not every piece of data out there will be relevant to our traveler, which is between 40 and 60 years old, has a household income, pretty affluent, well-educated, all that. So it's also about distilling the information and filtering out the noise. There's a lot of noise and cleaning up to do with data. So
we have ongoing conversations about data processing. It is a fascinating world. At United, being on the brand side, we have tens of millions of people who travel with us and are in our database. We have people who are part of our United Mileage Plus loyalty program, and then just other general travelers. And when you fly, of course, you have to provide your name, your birthday, just a few of those basics. But we have decades of data around people's travel history. Where have they flown? How often do they fly with us? Do they have some sort of status in our loyalty program? I mean, just literally sitting on reams and reams of data. What we do from the advertising team, because we work in close partnership with our friends in legal. They are among our best friends because we want to make sure we're doing everything in compliance. But we'll work with some third-party tools where we can basically mask a lot of that customer data, our first-party data, pass it over to a tool to create audience segments. So we're not necessarily going after customer X, but we're going after somebody who looks like them as we target them online, digitally or through social media. And so working on contracts and lots of agency relationships, vendor relationships. We have all kinds of terms and agreements that we put in place to make sure that data is being transferred and handled properly so that we don't violate any regulations. And it's a little bit different here versus in the European Union and other parts of the world too. Everywhere has different regulations. But first-party customer data is absolutely invaluable to build segments and do really just personalized, sophisticated targeting.
So, Kim, specifically, I guess this is for you. I don't know the other backgrounds, but I just LinkedIn you. And I noticed you had some beautiful little girls that you were celebrating for today. And one of the things that I've really struggled with professionally is I think, especially as women, our identity is so closely tied with our career. And it's hard to be open to change because of that and to different seasons of our life. And I have found it to be my ambition and my type A personality and desire to do well. It's very difficult also to set boundaries because I want to be an awesome mom as well. And so how do you help young women and midlife women navigate setting boundaries but still wanting to be an all-star and wanting to do the good work?
Well, if anybody's figured this out, I'm a captive audience because I don't know that I've figured it out. But I do. Many of my colleagues, as well as my team members, have young families, and I would say, because we do primarily work from home and virtually, I just try to make sure I consistently am encouraging people to, be mindful of who needs what the most right now. And is that work? Is that your 3-year-old with strep? And also don't apologize if a kid shows up in a Zoom meeting. Like, we've all been there. I mean, the stories we have are really funny now. They're not like really funny at the time, but I don't know. I'm very open with my team, and I think that as an agency and as a culture at our agency, people are very, very family oriented. I mean, everyone works extremely hard, but we all recognize that we're pulled in a lot of different directions. And so it isn't a culture where we feel we have to hide anything. I don't ever feel like I have to hide anything. But I know every work environment is very different. And there are just different seasons of life, I think, and you have to just be really realistic. I think, being realistic of what needs to get done today is probably the most important thing. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't really figured it out. It all stresses me out, to be honest. But you figure, you just do it. And, I think that it's great for my kids to see that I'm working. And they know when they walk in the door after school, 99% of the time I'm on a call with Susie and Pippa here, and like they're going to see them, and that's an okay thing because we're all human, and I think that COVID and being in a virtual environment has really revealed the humanity of everyone a little bit more, and I can only say that for my agency, but I think that it's a universal truth for most places of work.
I just wanted to add something to the boundary statement. So my life journey did not include a child or family, and I'm very sensitive to the needs of all of the individuals on my team, including male caregivers as well. So it's both ways. The one thing I would say was you have to watch our language, because I was in a coaching session with someone who was a mother, and she said, "I'm a mom of a three-year-old, but I'm a good worker." Like, and you're a good worker. No buts. There's no buts in that. So that's part of the imposter syndrome that we sometimes internalize. And show up as who you are and be proud of it. And then as you're making decisions on the types of companies you want to work with, ask about that and try to suss from the conversations that you're having during the interview process, what kind of culture they have and how accepting they are of you having the kids. Yes, don't apologize. Be like, hey, that's a special guest, the 3-year-old in that meeting. It's yeah, come join us. You might have a better idea than me. So just no buts in who you are. It is an and. So just a thought that I wanted to share.
Here in the front. And then after that, one more, and then we can have a little more mingling time after.
Thank you. To add to what you just said, I think that personally, the best thing that anyone can do for the little boys and little girls in their lives is for them to see you being a kick-ass person in the workplace. I have 2 kids, and I think it makes a huge difference. I have a question because I have a 21-year-old, had children very young, who is graduating from college, and she is a psychology major, and she wants to be a strategic planner, and she had an internship at a big box agency here in Chicago last summer. And as I'm hearing you, when the first question they asked is what you guys practically learned in your programs, and it sounds like you learn real-world applications. So we go back and forth of talking to her about going out in the workforce or getting a graduate degree, and it sounds to me like this program would be completely perfect for her. And I'm just wondering if you think people should work first and then go back, or if we should encourage her to apply to Medill like next, or what?
She's not a plant, by the way.
No, I'm not. I'm really not. But
I mean, I can only speak from my perspective. I went back in my late 20s, so I worked, and that worked out really well for me. I think I needed that work experience to really be able to land me there, because I didn't know what I really wanted to do for a while. I also felt that I brought a lot of practical experience to it, because I think that is one of the huge benefits of this program, is all of the real world experience you get and the interaction with real companies and real projects. And I think having some level of, for me, I needed some level of experience before it was going to be as useful. But N of 1. So I think that people have different, and we could put her in touch with a lot of people to talk to. We know people, yeah. I will be calling. Yeah, she will be calling. Yeah. If she could be my intern. Yeah.
Similarly, I spent 8 years working and figuring out what I wanted to do, where my passions were, where my strengths were, and then applied to the IMC program. And of course, I had that big debate with myself. Do I do a more traditional MBA program, or do I do the more focused marketing program? And I decided I want to go all in depth on marketing and communications. I think the work experience was invaluable. I thought I wanted to go to law school when I came out of undergrad. Really glad that I didn't go down that path.
I will say I had about a year of work experience before coming to Medill, so I guess I'm N of 3, sorry, but in terms of the work experience. But I think I really needed that year to mature a little bit, and also to learn a little bit about what it's like to work in groups. That's a real thing, by the way.
Yes.
We're not just putting you like in, or you're not just being put in pods randomly or anything like that. Everything you do in marketing is a collaborative effort. And so, you could go off and do your own thing all day. But one thing Professor Weinberger said that really resonated with me is, if you're doing group work, do the work first and then come to your group and share what you know, instead of just, staring off into space. That was something I had learned a little bit in the professional world before coming to IMC. But if you're coming straight from undergrad, I think that's fine too. I think it's worthwhile to find the path that's right for you. And I know you'll all be set up for immersion projects soon. That is also real examples of what you'll be doing in the working world. So there's experience here too.
One more question?
Wow, I'm so lucky I'm the last one. Thank you so much for being here, and I love you guys from currently in different stages of your career, and as a very junior person, graduate last December, I want to ask a question about mentor and mentee relationship in work. So I'm just gonna ask the very basic questions in my mind. One, do you suggest us actively reaching out to more senior women in the team and ask them as our mentor? Also, do you recommend us doing this for women in our same team or different department? And any other advice about how to build this kind of sustainable and healthy relationships in work? Yeah.
I would say, I come from the side where I am more a mentee. I'm still very early in my career where I seek opportunities to be someone's mentee. And I will say it goes both ways. You know, there is a lot that your mentor could learn from you in terms of your interests and your career path. In fact, they'll be more helpful to you if you're honest about, you know, the path that you want to go down. At Travelzoo, we do have a mentorship program where you do get paired. You take a survey and then you get paired with someone that could be in your department or in a different department. So I think, you know, with me being early in my career, I was mentored by someone in my department. But as I got to know my job more, would seek mentorship opportunities outside of that to understand the business on a global scale. So that might be one avenue, you know, start small in your department or wherever and then think globally. But I would also just say mentorship works both ways. You're learning from them, but they're also definitely learning from you.
I love this question. I think women especially are very open to mentoring and to meeting with more junior colleagues. My advice is just to make it as easy as possible for them. Do it on their terms. So if they say, absolutely, I'm willing to meet, you put that time on their calendar, you consult their availability, you meet them in their neighborhood if they mostly work remote or at the coffee shop in the lobby of your office, you know, make it as easy as possible for them so they don't have to go out of their way to meet in person or virtual too. Virtual is perfectly fine as an informational interview or a one-on-one mentoring session. This reminds me, if anyone years ago read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, you know, it was all the rage a decade ago, former chief operations officer at COO, she had a whole chapter called Will You Be My Mentor? And what she witnessed in her time at the Treasury Department and at Facebook and some of the other places that she worked is that there would be all these young women walking around the office, you know, approaching her and approaching other senior colleagues saying, will you be my mentor? Will you be my mentor? And you don't have to be that formal about it. You know, you don't even have to call it a mentoring session, but just to say, I would love to take you out for coffee for 60 minutes to understand more about your background or any recommendations you have for me. And then if you want a sustained relationship, make the effort to set it up as a quarterly meetup or twice a year. But yeah, again, just make it as easy as possible for that individual and they'll really appreciate the effort.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I also love the question. I found that the more organic the relationship can be, and so I think that really starts with just being really open to getting to know people in the workplace, because I think it's hard to identify who you're going to connect with and who's going to be the most valuable. And, you know, I think just really get to know people and see kind of who you click with and who you just feel like you I have a natural relationship, because a mentor and a mentee, it doesn't work unless you really can be open and have a connection. I would say, like, I like the informality of it too, just because I think people are a little bit more open when it's not labeled yet. You know, I guess it's like, but I don't know. I think don't be shy. I mean, people want to get to know you, and people want to help, and that's the greatest part about working, is getting to know people.
And also to address part of your question too about, do you meet with people on your own team, outside of your team? I think both. I think definitely having those relationships with people who aren't in your direct reporting line and, you know, whatever the hierarchy of your organization is. And then if you do need an introduction, is there someone in that department that can kind of be your in of, oh, I've got, you know, this colleague I worked with on a project and I'd love to talk to their manager. So even just seeing if someone can make like a very quick email introduction for you. But I think building relationships outside of your own team and your own department are very valuable.
I think also connecting with people who are kind of your class at work, like your graduating class or whatever you'd want to call it, like just your peers who are in the same life stage, you know, in the same career stage. You will make invaluable friendships and relationships, and you're going to learn so much from those people. And they're going to really be the ones that carry you throughout your career, because you'll all go in different directions, but you'll still stay very connected, and you'll eventually mentor each other, even though you're, you know, one's not more senior than the other.
I think this is the perfect final question, because here's our friend Hope, who just happens to be rekindling her mentorship program. So with that, I want to thank all of you, Brittany especially, for carrying the load and being our moderator, and for you guys for being here. I think this is probably the biggest and the best we've had yet, so I feel really good about bringing this back. Thank you very much. And we do have a couple more minutes. So Hope is here. If you guys are interested in talking about her mentorship program, we have a few. We ate all the food, but there are some more drinks. So for another 20 minutes or so, if you guys want to mingle, exchange information, and thank you for coming.
Yes, let me wait till there's